It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast. Yes, we are into a Friday. Didn't take long for another week to roll into a weekend now to look forward to as we talk your property news, your real estate 7 days a week. And you hear us, of course, on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. It is the 4th of October, and a common misconception, what do you think about this, is that all property investors in Australia are wealthy. Well, in reality, as PropTrack highlighted this week, 2.23 million Australians own an investment property, and 2/3 of them earn $100,000 or less, with half of them in the demographic of under 50 years old. The most common investors are everyday workers, like nurses, teachers, and electricians. And commentators are arguing that to address the housing crisis, the government should offer incentives to those mum and dad investors instead of favouring super funds and foreign corporations. With over 100,000 homes needed, the commentators say a small portion of these investors building just one more property each could significantly alleviate the housing shortage. You know, we got to think outside the box, and I think that's not a bad idea. That actually makes sense on a lot of different levels. And let's go to another place that makes sense for so many people investing right now and moving to Darwin. Let's catch up with our friend there, Will Johnson from Heron, Todd White. How you doing there, Will?
Great to be back online. The first week of October, it's scary to think where this year has disappeared to already. It's unbelievable.
So true indeed. Now tell me, are you one of these rich, wealthy Australians living in Darwin?
I'm certainly an Australian living in Darwin, but I don't know about the rich and wealthy part. I think we're all chipping away having a go to get to rich and wealthy, but it's such an interesting piece. The property investors which we interact with in our business daily, they're certainly not the investors that own 50, 60, 70 properties. It is very much a mum and dad investment market here, and it's such an interesting political football that's getting kicked around the place at the moment.
What do you think? As I say, I think it sort of makes sense that perhaps the government should sort of think outside the square here. The other thing that sort of highlights is the fact that you've got that happening more on a macro scale with individuals as opposed to all these companies trying to build so many of these houses, which just isn't actually happening.
Without question, what we've been doing isn't working. We have to shake the system and really look at all new avenues, and the encouragement to get more investment. We need to add more into the supply side. It's certainly not a demand side piece. We need more houses to get built, faster opportunities to get through planning. The roadblocks that are in place from a planning and consulting piece is just putting so much cost in place, and then you couple that with tricky financing situations, and to take some of the middle layers of bureaucracy out of the way so that we can fast track some projects and get some homes built. It's a very complex issue, but we really need to start hitting the supply side to make sure that we have affordable places to live.
Now, talking about bureaucracy, you have recently had the elections up there. How did all that sort of shake out?
Yes, we did. We had the 4-year election cycle, massive swing for the Country Liberal Party here in the NT. The platform for the CLP coming into the election was to fix crime, encourage business activity, and certainly constructions. One of their big planks, which will certainly spark an interest for your listeners, was around new construction, new house and land packages, $50,000 incentive for a first homeowner, a $30,000 incentive for anybody that's owned a property before, and $10,000 for an established home. So there is a catch. You've got to live in your house, like most of these state government grants and incentives have attached to them. They're the most generous incentives which have been placed in the country, and it's all talking to the supply side. We want to build our population here in the NT. We've got a lot of land, subdivisions ready to go. Land's not our issue now. For a lot of years, getting land supplied to the market has been a problem, but our local market has caught up with that. Now it's around let's get the product built.
Yeah, so just in terms of the 50K, if you did a price comparison, if you were going to build new, for example, in Brisbane, I mean, that is so favourable, isn't it, in Darwin compared to Brisbane and all the associated costs?
Absolutely. In our mortgage belt areas in Palmerston, which is a satellite city just to the edge of Greater Darwin, a brand new house and land package, 3 beds, 2 baths on sort of 400 square metres. You can sort of get an entry level in there around 600,000, depending on your level of fit out and whether you have a pool or not. So to add $50,000 into that, you're nearly hitting the 10% of the total cost. It's a real needle mover. It's going to get that encouragement. It's not, it's a nice to have. It's a definite game changer for that part of the market. And the builders and the early talk, because it is such a large portion of it, hopefully the borrowers will be able to use that for their deposit or at least have it packaged it up for their finance. So then, if they were close, it'll push them over the line and they can get going on these new builds.
Yeah, well, I think the word there is it's meaningful. It's not something that is a bit of a token gesture. So for around that 600K, can't do that in Brisbane. Now, what is happening with the rental market there in Darwin? Still pretty strong.
Yeah, rental market's still really strong here in Darwin. We're the 3rd highest capital city in the country for weekly rental rate on the median weekly rental. We're the lowest in the median house price for a capital value, but given that our weekly rents are the 3rd highest in the country, and that just talks to Darwin, the greater Northern Territory population being relatively transient. So they come for work projects, come for some study. So they are looking for rental accommodation on their way through, as opposed to buying and making it a permanent place. So we haven't had a lot of new construction in our marketplace over the past 5 to 7 years, really. So we think that the rental market's going to stay pretty strong going forward, and that then turns it's really tight vacancy rates, sub 2% in a lot of the major sectors. So it's a good story for investors. If you do lose a tenant, you're not going to have long periods of vacancy. You'll turn them over pretty quickly and keep the really strong rents in place.
All right, so we are talking to Will there in Darwin. When we come back, if you were wondering what those median house price and unit prices are, we'll check in on that next.
We help to break down real estate every day to help you better understand the Australian property market.
There's plenty of reason to be bullish in Perth in 2025 and into 2026. And I think that rate cuts, depending on how many there are, will pour fuel on the fire in all of these price points again. It'll open up more borrowing capacity in what is one of the strongest economies in the country.
So are you sticking to your prediction that any rate reduction won't happen until early next year? What are your thoughts around that?
If you read just the headlines, you'd have no doubt gotten a little bit excited to see what appeared to be a significant drop in inflation in the most recent data release. But when you dig in a little closer, you'll note that the headline inflation has dropped because of the state and federal government electricity rebates. And I think we'll see rates come down in the next 3 to 6 months. And I think the markets are all pricing this in. And it certainly appears that Michelle Bullock is digging her heels in, and she won't be rushed or bullied into dropping rates until she and the board see some real progress towards their target band.
You can join the conversation every week on the Real Estate Podcast.
And here we are on a Real Estate Friday, counting down to another weekend around Australia. We are talking to Will up there in Darwin. And time, Will, to have a look at those median house prices and unit prices for everybody this morning.
Yeah, great. This is REINT and realestate.com supplied data. 561,000 for the Greater Darwin area for a house. It's always interesting to know what does it look like from the previous quarter and from the previous year. They're largely firm, so that's a good quality home, 800 square metres. You're going to pick that up for under 600,000. Really competitive. When you're looking at the inner suburbs around Darwin, 745,000 is the median house price. That's probably the entry level, so we have a lower data set, so that can be skewed a little bit. Another major market for the Greater Darwin area is the Palmerston market. The median house price out there at 510,000. Really high level of stock, good volume. That's really popular in the owner-occupier, but we're also starting to see more activity from investors. You hear the stories that, certainly Perth have had over the past 12 to 24 months with more activity from the East Coast with buyers agents and investors. Those rich, wealthy Australians looking to invest and broaden out their portfolio. Well, certainly, we're expecting and hearing anecdotally on the ground from more activity in that price point around that $500,000, which it's a pretty comfortable price point. Over in the unit market, the Greater Darwin unit price, it's sort of hovering around 400,000. It has been there for quite a period of time. So, what do you actually get for 400,000? Well, you'd get a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit sort of on the fringe of the Darwin CBD, or you push out to, the popular spots of the coastal spots of Nightcliff and Rapid Creek, close proximity to the beach and all the good things that Darwin has to offer. If you push out to Palmerston, the unit market is a bit softer out there, and for the low 300,000, so about 325,000, you'll get a 2-bed, 2-bath unit out there. So it's certainly attractive from an owner-occupier standpoint. You can get started and get yourself into the market, or for investors, it's pretty affordable when you look at Darwin as a overall package compared to some of our eastern seaboard locations.
Yeah, this is why you are seeing those first home buyers, not only within your market, of course, but you've got those interstate of first home buyers, $325,000 for a 2-bedroom unit and 2-bathroom. That's not bad.
Absolutely. And, the cost of living pressures are real all over the country. But if you live up in the northern parts of Australia, and Darwin's a classic for that, there's so many work opportunities up here, whether you're in construction or, whether you're, starting out in the white collar brigade, there's certainly some opportunities which, might not be afforded to you in more competitive eastern seaboard marketplaces. So you can get a good job up here, you can get started. The big real ticket to this is that you can find somewhere to live. So I watch so much of the national media and younger people, and really that's pushing out to people under 40 just can't afford to buy a house. Well, that's certainly not the situation here in Darwin. So there's certainly a lot of good opportunities for that.
Great promo and a nice way to finish up there, Will. And I'm sure that, yes, there will be some inquiries after this conversation. Hey, enjoy your Friday, enjoy the upcoming weekend, enjoy all things property, and talk again soon.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, and to your listeners as well, good to chat again.
Every morning from 6 a.m. across Australia, we deliver you the latest property news, commentary and predictions from Perth to Cairns and from Melbourne to Brisbane, 7 days a week, only on the Real Estate Podcast. We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.